Yeah.
All righty. Howdy, and welcome to the Red Dirt Aggie Show. I'm here with our special guest today, Rob White. How you doing, Rob?
Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. So for those of you who don't know, Rob, he plays bass for Carson Jeffrey. He's a longtime member in Red Ass Aggie over there in Olson Section 203. He loves weather, among other things. But Rob, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, no, my name is Rob White, Fightin Texas Aggie class of 2014. Old cat, but yeah, I've been in the Bryan College Station area for roundabout on and off for 13 years. Originally from New Mexico myself, but been here and haven't looked back going back to New Mexico.
Yeah, man. Well, what's it like over there in New Mexico?
Oh, it's nice. I mean, I grew up in a small town called Carlsbad. Population was about 25,000 when I was there, and it's grown since, but it was a nice little town to grow up in. A lot of good family and friends, all within a couple of hours of where we were at. So made life easy
Yeah,
for a lot of things growing up, and honestly really enjoyed growing up out there. But yeah, it's a lot drier than it is down here in Bryan College Station. I'll tell you that much. We get like
uh,
6 inches of rain a year.
oh man, yeah, that's definitely a lot drier out there. You get the dry heat versus the humidity over here.
No doubt. We actually, it's a fun, before we get into it, one thing that's really kind of funny, we actually have a festival out in Carlsbad called Cavern Fest that we're playing at this year, which is cool for me. But the problem is, of course, it's June 10th.
Oh
So
no.
it's going to be like 110 degrees outside. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
That's unheard of. I mean, the 110, that's crazy. Man, I can't imagine. But what what made you or inspired you to want to become a musician?
Yeah, so I grew up, and you've probably heard this time or five, but I grew up in a family that was very, very musically influenced. My dad was a big classic rock guy, so we listened to a lot of, those type of bands growing up. Namely, his big influences. He always enjoyed listening to the Beatles, Pink Floyd, and then kind of developed my own taste of music as I got older, but also
Mhm.
listened to a lot of Garth Brooks growing up because he was the king of the 90s. you know he was the guy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was very influenced with a lot of music taste early, and frankly between that and church, I did a lot of stuff via the church where it was choir things as well as eventually getting to marching band stuff, and did all of that kind of as part of the upbringing. So music's always been around me and my family, and frankly, I wouldn't be here without that.
Well, would you play in the marching band? Out of curiosity, I was a trumpet player myself, marching band.
Nice. There you go. Yeah, I played primarily tenor and baritone saxophone. So I was tenor sax my first 2 years, and then we actually we're lacking in the low end, so they needed because we only had two tuba players my junior
Yeah.
and senior year. So they said we need
Oh.
somebody to play baritone. Who wants to do it? I was like, sure. So I played baritone sax, and that was fun. I actually still own my tenor. I sold the baritone a while back, but yeah, I keep
Mhm.
I keep it around the house.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have both my trumpets, my marching one and then the one from concert season. They don't get much use now, but they're there,
They're
in case
there.
I get bored one day.
Exactly.
But what would you say is your favorite part of creating music?
Well, as far as creating music, I like getting into this situation where whether we're practicing or whatnot, but just whenever we and the guys, whenever we get together, we come across a handful of different bands that we've listened to, and just kind of influences that have come in from all different angles. And it's cool to see how it's become this mashup of what we're doing now, where you've got so many different little influences, and it comes together to create something new and unique. And that's something that I've always liked about the creating music process.
So kind of that collaboration and bringing in everyone's influences, and it all just creates this awesome new thing.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, What would you say is maybe the hardest or most challenging part of being a musician? Is it the making the new music, perfecting the music, whether it be practicing or in the studio or performing something else that
Frankly, travel, but outside outside of that, I mean, it's definitely an interesting thing when you're trying to come up with something new and different. Um, just because there's so many bands, especially on our scene these days, and
yeah.
everybody's trying to get their little cut of the pie. And I've got zero issues with any of those bands because everybody's got their own little thing that they're trying to go for. But it's
Yeah.
just you're trying to come up with something that it's not necessarily something you're pushing for a radio hit, but something that's important to you, something that you want to talk about as far as the writing portion, but then also coming up with the musical portions of the music. I find that just trying to stay fresh and trying to get
Right.
something new out there, that's definitely difficult, but it is an exciting challenge that we try to tackle every time we're getting back into the writing process.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny that you mentioned travel too. We interviewed the Weathered Souls.
Right.
Um and a lot of them they all said the same thing. They said the driving, man, like because you'll drive for hours just to go play 30 minutes or 45-minute set, then load up and drive again for hours. And I was like, I never even thought about that, just like all the travel.
Well, I mean, I guarantee you talk to any band and they'll tell you 15 different things like what's our favorite gas stations, what are we picking up, what are the best deals you're going to get on the road.
Yeah.
Long story short, avoid Buc-ee's on the weekend always.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, just especially if you're on that I-35 corridor, whether you're in New Braunfels or if you're in Temple, further up north into Denton area, but any of those Buc-ee's gas stations, they're just an absolute hell to get in and out of. So we just say, forget it. Let's just stay home. Let's go to the QT across the street that has like
Yeah.
maybe a third of the people there.
Hmm. But who are some of your biggest influences, or just your favorite artists right now, maybe that are out there playing right now?
Man, some of my favorite influences and bands out there. So I would say influences. I mean, I grew up, obviously listening to a lot of classic rock. So I really enjoyed getting to listen to a lot of those bands. And frankly, I've gone back into a deep dive on a lot of them. But yeah,
Hmm.
I would say one of the bigger influences for me has been a lot of ZZ Top because I'm a huge fan. Rest in peace, Dusty Hill, but he was the type of bass player that just kind of held it down, but he knew exactly what he was doing. So
Hmm.
he was always a big influence for me, um, as well as like scene guys. I mean, if you look at Cody Canada and The Departed in particular, as well as old school Ragweed, I mean,
Oh yeah.
Jeremy Plato, many would argue he's probably the best bass player on our scene without question. And
Hmm.
I would argue that. But I would say those guys have always been a big influence for me. I've been listening, actually doing a deep dive on Three Doors Down lately. So I've been
Oh
listening to a lot of
yeah.
Three Doors Down, and they just announced their 20th anniversary of Away from the Sun tour, right?
Man, I I grew up listening to that album when I was little, riding around with my dad, listening to that.
It's a great album. So I'm
Yeah.
excited that they're coming back around to do that. So I know they're playing at, they're going to be in Texas, of course, over a weekend. However, one of the shows is going to be on a Wednesday in Austin, and I think we're going to make it a point to head over to the Moody Center. Go to the dark side to go watch a show.
Oh yeah, man. That's how that'll be cool. I love Three Doors Down, man.
Yeah,
Um,
big fan of their work.
yeah. So here's our question that you can thank Rich O'Toole for. He was our guest actually to who agreed to do an interview with us. But the beans belong in Chile.
To quote a once great man by the name of Kent Finley, one of my one another great songwriter, an incredible writer, good friends with William Clark Green. Actually wrote a song about it. If you put beans in chili, you don't know beans about making chili. I don't do beans in chili. I don't do beans generally, but much less not in chili. So
Okay.
Rich and I have gotten into it on Twitter, not like really, but we've
No,
had
but
a back and forth.
yeah. No, y'all two both have a huge Twitter presence. I've always enjoyed keeping up with y'all over there on Twitter for sure. Um, what was your wildest Aggie related memory from your time when you were in school at A&M?
Well, I would say so. When I was in college, I was most prominently with the singing cadets. When I was in college, not actually within the corps, but the the separate group
Singing
that
cadets,
was
yeah.
the singing cadets, right? And we performed, I mean, countless incredible shows. I mean, we got to perform for H.W. Bush several times, which was
Oh
cool when
wow.
he was on
Yeah.
campus. Probably the wildest memory I can think of. It was, I would say, probably the fall. Yeah, or actually, excuse me, it was the spring of 2013. This was right after Chris Kyle, American Sniper. He passed away. And when they were doing his memorial service, they were trying to get a military choir to come out for it, but the scheduling was off. So we got called up to go to his memorial service there at the AT&T Stadium there in Dallas or in Arlington, and it was a crazy experience. There's 20,000 people in the stands, and we're just standing at attention. We sang a couple of hymnals and things like that. It was a
Yeah.
very somber event, but it was definitely something that was very cool to me that I got to hold on to. And of course, my time in college, if we're going on the sport route, we had the chance to go. This was the Johnny Manziel years.
Yeah.
So I was there 2010 to 2014. So I got to watch the end of the Big 12 era, the beginning of the SEC era. Got to watch our boys punch their ticket to Omaha 2011.
Oh
That was
yeah.
that was my freshman year in college. Plus, got to go to the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma when we just took them to the woodshed. Those type of memories were very cool from the sports standpoint and something I can hold on to. Very special to watch, especially Johnny Manziel at the time.
Yeah, man. I missed out on the Manziel era just barely. I was a freshman in 2014, so coming in right after they'd redone the one side of Kyle, and I got to see, the turmoil with Kenny Hill the first year.
you mean Kenny Trill?
Yeah, Kenny Trill.
That was so
We were
that
like,
was
oh my
such a
God,
wild time.
Johnny 2.0. We gotta give him a nickname, and then no, it didn't end up working out, did
I will
it?
say that first game against South Carolina, though, we were all pretty
Yeah.
hype after that, huh?
Yeah, that game against South Carolina, and then I remember that it was that next week, the first home game. My first home game, we had like a 2.5 hour rain delay, and then I
Right.
stayed the whole time though because my first home game. We beat Lamar 73-3.
So it was really funny. I guess Good Bull Hunting or somebody actually did a one of those score predictors, and I actually predicted the right score. I said 77-3, but
Yeah.
there was a tiebreaker on the timing of the scores or whatever, and that's why I lost. And I was like,
Oh.
really? Like two guys, two guys gets the score right.
That's pretty funny, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
enjoyed
love
that.
Good Bull Hunting though. They put out some funny stuff.
Yeah, they're great dudes. They're all great dudes.
Um, but what about the craziest thing you've seen while you've been out on tour with the band or just out on the road?
Man, crazy things on the road. We've had our handful of stories. We've played a lot of different places, been all over the country. Recently, last year we ended up on a run with Colby Cooper. I remember we played in Iowa City, Iowa. It was literally like negative 14 degrees outside. It was so cold. And seeing the girls up there in Iowa walking around like it's nothing. They're like, this is whatever. I'm like, I literally 3 layers deep and I'm freezing right now. What's going on here? But I would say that one was pretty fun. As far as like a really cool experience was getting to go up to Steamboat, Colorado.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we've just played up there at the start of the year.
Mm.
I hit the road and went up there,
There's a big
played.
festival up there every year, right? For the Texas music scene.
Absolutely massive festival. And we've
Yeah.
had a chance to watch a lot of bands that I wanted to watch over the years. Namely, got to see Steel Woods, who I've been waiting to see a long time. Got to
Yeah.
watch Great Divide, which they had just gotten. They weren't like just back together, but this was like one of their first big shows, so we had a chance to watch them. And Yeah, perform in front of a lot of cool people and really got to get a nice glimpse into the scene and how people kind of view a lot of different bands. It was definitely a cool experience.
Yeah. Um, and then back in College Station in college, you spent any time at Hurricane Harry's while you were in college, going there and dancing and stuff?
Oh yeah, no, we danced out there quite a bit. I was in the era where we still had the Hall of Fame too. My freshman and sophomore year, which between you and me, I thoroughly enjoyed going to the hall just because it was not as many college kids. It was a little bit older crowd,
Hmm.
but a little bit more musically oriented crowd at the time was over at
Hmm.
the Hall of Fame. So we'd go out there and watch all kinds of bands. I remember watching Aaron Watson and a handful of folks out there before it closed. But yeah, spent a lot of time at Hurricane Harry's and actually, finally got to play it kind of the beginning of 21, and we played it. I played it 3 times now, and it's cool to say, you get to play the big spot in town.
Hmm. But do you have a favorite song that either you or the band has written? Or
And so my favorite song that we have, honestly, one of our newer ones that I'm a big fan of. I got a couple of them that I was in on that I really enjoyed from the new record. One is called "I Don't Think That I Can." It's very much a song that starts that 6/8 flow. Sounds like it's going to be might be pretty chill, but then you get into the chorus of the song and it punches you pretty good. And frankly, we've turned it into such a fun song live in terms of the outro. So if you guys get a chance to catch us at some point, be sure to keep an eye out for that. But
yeah.
another song that's currently not in the set, but hopefully at some point in the near future, it's another song called Hotel Paisano, which that song has a lot of it's got some political background to it regarding a lot of the folks out in the Marfa area, but
Hmm.
it's gotten a lot of positive feedback from people. And frankly, it's a song that was written from the heart
Hmm.
about a very real issue in that part of the country. So it was cool to be part of that writing process.
And what would you say is the coolest venue that you've ever performed at? Your favorite venue you've ever played?
My favorite venue. So we've played a few different cool spots. Obviously over the years, but I would say one of the cooler ones that I've had a chance to play was a theater over there in Kansas City. We were on that same run with Colby Cooper at the time.
Yeah.
That was back in February, and the place was called the Uptown Theater. And one of those type of places that you have where it's just people front to back,
Yeah.
huge setup. I mean, we looked at the lineups of people that have played there, and I mean, you're talking this is big rock bands. We saw posters for Nine Inch Nails, Disturbed, Breaking
Yeah.
Benjamin, like big rock bands. So,
Yeah.
to share that kind of stage was cool. LJT last year was awesome getting to be on that festival. It's obviously a huge Texas festival. Looking
Yeah.
forward to Chili Fest this weekend, which we're going to get into. But honestly, it's been, yeah, I would say honestly, Uptown Theater, just from an aesthetic, it's a very cool spot in Kansas City. So really enjoyed playing there.
Yeah, I've heard that from some of the other artists that we've had on as well, is that there's a lot of great venues here in our state, but there's a lot of really cool ones in the Midwest too, like
Mhm.
that are theater style like that they were saying are just really neat to perform in. Um, and what would you say your ultimate goal for your career as a musician is, if you have one?
I would say my ultimate goal at this point, get to a point where we are just getting paid to do some music. I think that's the ultimate goal of a lot of musicians. I know some people are just,
Make it a career.
yeah, make a career out of it in some form or fashion. I love playing with Carson, and it's been great. Really enjoyed a lot of the different people that we've got to interact with through that, but also really enjoyed the recording process. So I've had a chance to record with a few different bands, which has been a blast to do. But
Hmm.
yeah, if I could just turn this into a full on career as far as the music stuff, whether it's exclusively road stuff, but if it's a combination of road stuff plus recording,
Mhm.
Whatever that might look like. I think that's my end goal. I want to hit the road and just crank it out.
That I would have to say that's my goal for this podcast too. Be monetized someday and make this my career.
Absolutely.
But because I love doing this. So
Yeah.
um who are well, I think we already touched on that one, but who are some of your favorite artists of any genre out there today? I guess we could say maybe some other genres that aren't
Oh, sure. Yeah. Other artists I've big influence on. I mean, I enjoyed a lot of Kings of Leon in particular. I've been listening to a lot of them thanks to my drummer Chase. He's been a big influence there. He's a big Kings of Leon guy. I love a lot of rock bands, and have definitely been listening to a lot of these modern rock bands. There's some buddies of mine I've been keeping up with out of San Antonio. They're called Kingdom Collapse. They're on their way up. Great rock band. Obviously, Cody Canada and The Departed, big fans of their work. Shane Smith and the Saints have been phenomenal. Seeing what they've been able to do. Whiskey Myers is
Yeah.
huge influence, especially when I first moved to Texas, because when I was getting into Texas music scene, I didn't know anything really. I knew some Eli Young, but I didn't know the scene really. And that year in 2011, I got Diamonds Gasoline from Turnpike Troubadours and Firewater both came out that year. And those were
Wow.
two huge records as a freshman that I was like, holy cow, this is our genre of music.
Yeah.
This is cool. So I would say, yeah, those have been big influence for me as well. But yeah, it's been cool to keep up a lot of those bands.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, like, coming to college and then you discover all those, you're like, wait, like there's this whole other music scene, this whole other side of country music of what you think is
Mm-hmm.
music. Even me being just from down in Houston, hadn't heard as much of it until I got to College Station. And then I'm like, I see what everyone else is listening to. And I'm like, why do more people not know about this? Like
Right.
it's best kept secret.
No doubt. It's definitely been exciting.
Yeah. But so do you have any new music coming up that you can talk about, whether that be with Carson or solo project, anything like that?
Sure. Yeah, we nothing solo right now. Nothing I've looked into at this
Mhm.
point. Something we've considered, but at this point, just mostly Carson focused. As far as new music, we did just have our new album come out here in November. Fairweather Cowboy. You can check it out on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you ingest your music. But you can also some of the new music we've got coming out. We've played around with 3 or 4 new songs that Carson's really looking to get going here before long. Definitely has some of that Western influence in a
Yeah.
lot of our stylings right now, and nothing we're going to push out anytime soon. But we've considered those, perhaps a live record, a few other things. So we're going down the possibilities. But right now we're sitting on the new music, and actually our lead song on the album Fairweather Cowboy just got put on radio, and you can check that out in a variety of different stations, and plus it's on Spotify too, so should be fun.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. um Chili Fest coming up this weekend. You excited for that? You ready?
Yeah, no, Chili Fest, I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of been a long time coming for me. It's one of those places that I've always wanted to be playing at. I was there the year ZZ Top was supposed to play, but Dusty got hurt, and I was like, dang it, so I missed out on Chili Fest that year, in terms of one of the bands I really wanted to watch. But got to see Skinner there. Watched a lot of bands coming up and grow through Chili Fest, and in fact, when I was in my previous band, I played with Jordan Nix and the Day Drinkers at the time. Um,
Oh,
I was with Jordan Nix for about 3 years, on and off, and we ended up actually winning Battle of the Bands for Chili Fest at the Tap, in the
I think I
in the
might have been there that night. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, that was the fall of 2019. It was us and Joey Greer, who's another great artist, and we're good friends with him. But um, we ended up winning the Battle of the Bands, and we're getting set to be on the main stage at Chili Fest. It was going to be us, and that same day, Shane Smith was going to be on the lineup, as well as Whiskey Myers. So
Yeah.
I was excited, like, hey, we get to share the stage with Whiskey Myers. This is awesome. But then, of course, the big COVID bomb hit, and
Oh, yeah.
there went Chili Fest and everything else. But we've come around now where we got contacted early in the year to play and got to see the lineup a little ahead of time. We were very excited to get
Yeah.
on our lineup, and Chili Fest is obviously our hometown festival. We generally say we're out of Bryan College Station, so looking forward to seeing a lot of familiar faces and performing in front of a lot of people who don't know who we are. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's the best way to for them to find out who you are there,
Exactly.
Um, and so according to your Twitter presence, I've noticed you have a few nicknames out there, whether it be Captain America or Rob the Weatherman.
Mhm.
But what can you tell us a little bit more about where maybe those come from? I mean, the Weatherman one, I see maybe you're just interested in weather, but
Sure. Funny story on both of those. So when I was still in college at the time, the Captain America thing came about because this was right in the middle of Marvel really getting their big thing going, and Captain America, even before the movies came out, was one of my favorite superheroes, just because he wasn't the strongest, he wasn't flying around, he wasn't doing all those things, but he worked hard, was a great leader, and I always thought he was a good influence, good role model to follow. So
yeah.
I was like, I enjoy that. Well, my parents bought me like this zip up hoodie that had the Captain America hood on it. So, if you've been to baseball games, one of the things that happens is the shades on six, right? Well,
Oh, yeah.
during shades on six, one of our old guys, Sandy, nicknamed Stat Boy, he dressed up in a pink bunny suit and put sunglasses on and had a head, had a hat and a bunch of crazy stuff. But that became kind of my thing. I was like, I'm going to wear a Captain America hoodie, put on the sunglasses, do the whole deal. And then once the hoodie got phased out, it was still like a bandana with the USA flag, sunglasses, that kind of deal. So that had become more or less my persona, if you could call it that, at the games. Not as prevalent these days, namely because a lot of the folks that were around are no longer around. They've moved on. And so that's not as prominent as a thing, but that's still my handle on Texas Ags. If anybody's keeping an eye out for me, you'll see me frequenting, primarily on the baseball forum. I don't really venture out beyond that much, but if you see me post, I'll be posting about the uniforms, updates, and things like that. But as far as Rob the Weatherman White, so that's a band story. So we were actually loading out of a show in Pottsboro, Texas. This must have been, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks into me being with Carson, very, very new at this point. But we just finished playing a show. It was a pretty solid show, good crowd. And we started loading out our gear into our trailer. Well, at this point, there had been a line of storms that were moving in from the west. And I'd been keeping up with it on radar and whatnot. We were kind of slow with our loadout. Well, we got to the point where there was a bit of a change in the wind. I could smell the rain. And I ran back inside and said, we need to finish loading right now. We're going to get dumped on. We need to finish. And we said, okay, fine, whatever. So we threw everything in the trailer, shut it down, all that fun stuff. But yeah, no, it actually worked out real good. And so after that, we piled in and Carson said, man, are you some kind of weatherman? And I said, yeah, I guess so. But so that's more or less where it came from was, he started calling me Rob the Weatherman White at shows, and that's where it came from.
So, so did you have like an interest in weather or anything before that? Because I had noticed you retweet a lot about the weather and stuff in the past, or is that really all that it came from?
So when I first started out, I was originally a meteorology major at A&M. Okay. And that was my main focus right out the gate, was doing that. But discovered quickly that I wasn't as big of a fan of the math.
Yeah.
That's always a fun part. But whenever I first got going, I remember in my youth seeing a tornado when I was very young. I was, I don't know, maybe at that point, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Twister had just hit theaters, so that was a big influence for me.
Mhm.
And I've just always been fascinated, in particular with tornadoes. And so that was something that I've always been really focused on, was really getting to watch how the weather played out and tornadoes and all that stuff. So it's been interesting to see, uh, how Twitter kind of interacts with it, how folks, just, I like to keep people informed, just so,
Yeah.
because so often people are just kind of like, whatever, it's going to be a whatever day. And
And then I
all,
don't
all it takes is one worst case scenario.
yeah. Um and then you mentioned a little bit about section 203. I always used to notice you over there back when I was in school.
Right.
Several of the baseball games. What kind of led you to get involved in section 203 at Olson?
So when I was, a freshman, I was really not all that into 203. I'll be honest. I showed up to a game, and at the time, all the olds that were up there were yelling at all the kids coming up during the middle of the game. Between innings, all that kind of stuff. We were like, "Holy cow! Maybe let's chill out a little bit, huh?" Anyway, but got to the point where I started sitting in with them a little bit more often, really by about my junior year, really. And ever since then, I've kind of been plugged in with those guys as often as I can be. Not very often, unfortunately, thanks to the job, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But
it's been good.
what are some of your favorite Aggie baseball memories in general, or from 203? Either one of those, really.
Yeah. So when I was, man, I love me some Aggie baseball. I would say one of my favorite things that ever took place. Obviously, it was cool to be in attendance when we punched our ticket to Omaha back in 2017. That was very cool. So enjoyed getting to do that.
Yeah.
But there's been a ton of other great stories that are typically not with the shows that you would or the games that you would think, right? I mean, just kind of your average Tuesday games. I remember we had a pitcher one time, and this guy, I kid you not, he was just a hoss of a man. He was huge. Like, we're talking in a pitcher on top of that, like big
Yeah.
guy. Anyway, he came out to the mound, and holy cow, our boy Stat Boy actually came up and had brought in one of those old, like one of those signs that says oversized load in it. And he had us unveil it whenever he took the stage. And I was like, whenever he hopped on the mound, I said, "Oh my goodness, we're gonna get some hell for this." Well, it turned out we ended up not getting too much hell, so that was nice. But it was just hilarious the way it all panned out. But that was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we've had a handful of those things, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting to go out to those games.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Reed Rowdies, and from a similar standpoint, sometimes it's those smaller games that gets those like smaller schools and stuff where crazy things like that will happen. You create those memories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's kind of been a rough start to the season for Aggie baseball.
Yeah.
What do we need to do in order to make a regional? And what do you think about our game against TU tomorrow? Our chances?
Well, honestly, right now, I think the thing that we have to focus on most of all is just we need to get base runners going. I think we need to be very timely with our hitting. That's just kind of been the main focus. And honestly, our biggest issue above all else, really lately, I think, has been pitching.
Yeah.
We've seen that at this point, the weekend rotation hasn't seen a lot of strengths.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have not gotten a lot of the additional support from the bullpen, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think as we go forward, I would like to see us eventually get going with the pitching. I think if the pitching can come around a little bit, we'll feel a lot better. But yeah, I think until that happens, we're giving up 8-9 runs a game. I don't see us keeping pace. So we got to really focus in on trying to limit the runs, and we got to score.
Yeah.
Score more runs than the other team. That's the most important thing.
got to pitch and hit well at the same time, because it seems like a lot of times too those don't line up.
Yeah, it's a novel thought, right? It's like, hey, let's do that.
Score more runs than the other team, and then we'll win.
Exactly.
But
So
yeah, big game against Texas tomorrow on a Tuesday night.
yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. I know I am. I got tickets for the game, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I was trying to get tickets, but those prices were crazy. The resale market was pretty crazy, and I don't have season tickets or anything, so it was tough.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been difficult, but yeah, no, I'm excited for the game. I think it's gonna be a good time. I've got a friend of mine coming in from out of town. I'm gonna go sit with, so that'll be fun. Yeah, no, always fun, because it doesn't matter what the records are, doesn't matter how poor you played the week before. When it comes to Texas, anything goes.
That's right. Well, beat the hell out of TU, but thanks for stopping by today, Rob.
Sure thing.
Really appreciated having you on the show. And if you ever want to stop back by and talk Aggie baseball or Texas music anytime, let me know.
Absolutely.
But thanks so much for being on. Rob White, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great time, and we'll definitely catch you soon.
Yeah, sounds good.